All right, thanks for everyone for coming. I'm just going to start it because I usually don't finish this talk, so I just want to give it some chance of finishing. I'll put my contact info up again at the end. So feel free to DM. My DMs are open, or email me. I look forward to hearing about everybody's side projects after this talk. So just to frame this talk, what is a side project? As you guys might be working on, these are projects that are we're working on nights and weekends, unless obviously you have a night job. There could also be side projects within your company, but and of course you're all smart enough to know that there's a lot of overlap between side projects and companies that are bootstrapped. It's kind of I think of it as more like a state of mind, I guess. The biggest overlap is obviously there's no outside funding. Often these are solo endeavors, and usually start to kind of scratch an itch, or maybe just for fun, learn a new tech. Eventually, but most unfortunately collect GitHub dust. But there are more and more projects that people are figuring out they can start with almost kind of no capital, make money, sustain themselves, and honestly be life-changing for the creator. Creator being you, not God or whoever. So just a little bit about me, and you can find my whatever history on LinkedIn if you care. I just moved to St. Paul from a couple years ago, from a good 15 years in San Francisco. Most of my network is there. So I've ended up at some very unlikely large companies, thanks to some kind of wild rides from small, tiny startups. Going through growth and eventually exiting, some VC backed, some bootstrapped. Some projects. So since last year's talk, the projects I've been kind of focusing on the side. Postcard is a Instagram commerce platform with a lot of small vintage shops across the country, but also larger companies like GTS, Living's, kombucha brand. Fat Cap is it's a mobile app that's still in development, and if you're not put off by how this slide deck looks, you might be into that one. Groveland Park Labs. This is a kind of a suite of voice and chat apps for schools and parents that I obviously had personal experience with. I might touch on that later, and I've had to recently make a bunch of plugins for Shopify e-commerce stores that I'll probably touch on later as well. So why do a project? So the usual answer is just that you want to be your own boss. I have a bit of a variation on that. So one cliche of venture-backed startups is to just always be hustling. But I'd rather just always be hedging, and by hedging I mean I want to be hedged against my own job. But also anything that happens worldwide, any political or electoral events. I look to small side projects for diversified income streams, as passive as possible, and I kind of think of them as kind of a rental income or kind of your 401k. You don't have to put all your eggs in one basket. So like this unnecessary movie reference, when the world is trying to sweep your leg, I want to make sure that I'm always in the crane position. I also often think of this part of the airline safety videos where they say, put the oxygen mask on yourself before assisting other passengers. It sounds cruel, but it's all about long-term optionality and the greater good. And then one note, it's kind of on risk management and risk aversion. In this town especially, a lot of people I feel like are hesitant to leave big corporations. And there is truth to that, obviously, but like I said, having all your eggs in one basket to me just feels riskier than a growing startup where you're learning a lot of new skills, or ideally building your own suite of side projects. Because anything from management incompetence to a creepy CPO can take your company down at any time, and then you're kind of screwed. So just kind of back of the envelope kind of numbers. This equation is kind of kryptonite for most investors. And I agree, these numbers are kind of on the low end of my expectations for what I would like a side project to bring in, something I put a lot of time into. But the point is just that these days, it costs almost nothing. It's asymptotically going to zero to build and deploy an app, at least in terms of like server costs and whatnot outside of your time. And out of the 2 billion plus humans online, 100 paying users should be pretty easy to acquire, and more importantly, to support long term. And then if you just kind of level up the numbers or the pricing, and ideally rack up a few of these small projects, you have kind of the foundation for like what I consider like a mini solo empire. And if you have a few of these projects, and if something goes down, you're not totally toast. And that gives you optionality. So as Jules says to Vincent, optionality goes a long way. And eventually you can still go the investment path. You just have more power when you're negotiating. And one other thing I always tell people is to not rush into their moonshot ideas or what they think are their moonshot ideas right away. Often what you think of as your moonshot is going to pivot to something else. And side projects are a way to create some diversified baseline income that you can use to support your actual moonshot, your future moonshot. So Instagram, was originally only about check-ins. YouTube, I don't know if you know, YouTube started originally as a dating site for its founders. And worst case, your project just sits on the shelf, but you've invested in a transferable skill that can help you in your day job. Okay, so who else is doing this, and where can you find inspiration? And by finding inspiration, how can you build your own network of mentors and advisors and experts? So I'd start with the indiehackers.com. It's a community forum and an excellent podcast. On their site, you'll find like real numbers, revenue numbers from projects. They're not all side projects, but they're all bootstrapped. It's not owned by Stripe, so you're actually, for most projects, you're actually getting real numbers. Although I doubt anyone's really lying about their revenue numbers here. So there are tons of other maker communities. Some are more indie hacker-like than others, but these are people who are they're running their own projects. They're overcoming real problems in real time, not 5 years ago, not 7 promotions ago. And I'd recommend, rather than look for somebody who's supposedly an expert in the local community, just reach out and don't underestimate cold emailing founders. Even if you think they're busy, every founder goes through hell, and they're usually privately needing to vent, or they want to help others avoid it. And anyone who doesn't respond to you, you can put them on your a-hole list, but they might legitimately not have time to get back to you right away. So like I said before, you can always go the VC route later. And just a note on these, like there's not just traditional VC, there's this new-ish kind of model like indie VC, which is still venture capital. They basically let you buy your ownership back and take like an annual kind of profit share. It's kind of like more like a profit sharing agreement, and they give you money up front to help you grow. Basically, if you pay yourself personally, that's how they get some multiple back of that. I think of it as kind of like a bank mortgage with a slightly more complicated math, and it works out for a lot of people. It lets you avoid kind of the VC-funded rat race. It's kind of in between that and bootstrapping. Now, they will sell it to you as this false dichotomy of only a rat race and only burning out on a bootstrapped project. But I think you can stay solo. There's a happy medium in between without needing to raise money. There's also pure debt like Silicon Valley Bank and Lighter Capital. It's another company. I just happen to have. There's others out there. I just happen to have personal connections with some of these companies. And the last point, selling. You can sell to another company, but you can also sell to folks like Xenon Ventures. They buy profitable SaaS-based companies and then run them for you. It's usually founders who are tired and kind of want to move on to their next idea. And speaking of popping up, accelerators are just a different name for VC or indie. And what all of these, well, most of these models have in common is that they give you cash, and it seems like the common selling point is this network of experts and advisors that will supposedly save you at the drop of a hat. This is usually it's a tempting promise. Even boot camps promise this now as a way to suck you in. There are definitely cases where obviously this works, but I would recommend just think about is it worth the cost, and are there other ways to get the information help you need. Often a cold email or a Medium post is good enough. Nobody's a magical gatekeeper. That's all I'll say about that for now. So what's happening? So why a lot of these models are popping up is investors are feeling a lot of FOMO because they're missing out on companies like Basecamp, MailChimp. I think Atlassian too was bootstrapped for a long time. These companies are going public or close to going public, making a ton of money, and they took no money when they started out. And it's just getting easier to build companies with little money up front. And accelerators, they're mushrooming. They're taking on more and more companies to the point where the supposed signal you get from being part of an accelerator is kind of fading away. And this doesn't get talked about that much. I've noticed around here, but not every accelerator is good for you. Sometimes there is a such thing as a negative signal. Investors know, and this might not seem fair, investors know that not some accelerators are better than others. And if you get into one that they don't like, it could be a negative signal if you're trying to raise money later. So don't apply willy-nilly to the first deadline that you keep hearing about on Twitter. Because if you want to make money later, if you start making money, they'll make up for the lost time. You don't have to go to every networking event to build a relationship. You can stay home and just talk to your customers and build. Okay, so enough of the editorialism. So let's get a little bit more tactical. Like, how do you figure out what you want to work on? Obviously, you want to do something that's totally unique, has a large market, and there's no competition. That's what so usually told. I say that's great, but sometimes you don't have the time, or you don't have that perfect idea. Most ideas you have, actually somebody's already tried it, and as you know, most companies die. What you might not know is a huge reason why companies die is the founders just can't stand each other anymore. And then there's another bigger class of companies that are just zombie companies, and that just means a mix of anything from founders are burnt out and they just don't have the energy anymore, revenue's flatlining or declining. Another thing you don't think about necessarily is stock options are mispriced. We got mispriced early on, and they don't have enough stock to attract, top-tier talent, and so they're not really developing at the same level. So the bottom line is it's not always because the idea was wrong. So this is a website called yclist.com. It's I don't know if you know what Y Combinator is, a top-tier accelerator. This is a list of every company that's gone through YC, and you can filter it by the ones that have shut down. And it's kind of a fascinating read after you've had, especially after you have some wine, to just get your creative juices flowing, even if you don't necessarily pick one of these. Also, App Store reviews, treasure trove of ideas for future and current projects. I like to look at the date of the complaints. Okay, and see if have the developers actually bothered to fix anything. That usually tells you how much energy is going into this company. And if there isn't, then it's a candidate to just go in for the kill. LinkedIn and Crunchbase, these are great to research existing companies, see if they're real companies or if it's somebody on a side project who's kind of outsourcing something to India and just kind of half-assing it. Again, fair game to go in if you think you can make money. One of my favorite sites, Glassdoor, which you've probably heard of. This is where you hear kind of the real talk about what's happening inside a company. I've heard about secret layoffs. I've heard about super creepy founders and interviews. It's really great, and it can give you the motivation to just kind of go in and pounce on one of these companies that you think is going to go down. Okay, so another thing is nonprofits and volunteer opportunities. They have similar pain points as a for-profit company. So I'm on the board of Articulture, which is like a local art nonprofit in the Seward neighborhood. And we did their e-commerce site, and then I went in and start to build tools that just kind of automate every task I could find in their office. And so not only is revenue up 50%, but their jobs have been redefined to focus on marketing, which is now bringing in even more money. And the benefit to me is, other than helping them out, is I can sell some of this tech to other e-commerce for-profit businesses because it's similar pain points. So it's kind of a win-win. So I'd recommend kind of looking around at opportunities around the community. Okay, so let's get a little bit nerdier here. So I think there's kind of three types of entrepreneurs. So there's people who know how to code. There's people who want to know how to code, and then there's people who know they'll never want to code ever again. But they still want to make their ideas come to life. So I'm going to try to address all three of these use cases, I guess, really quickly here. But first, before I do that, I just want to point out something that's not always obvious to everyone, but it's just always good to keep in mind. Just about every app you use is basically just lipstick on a database. There's a pattern called CRUD, which is create, retrieve, update, and delete data. And every app is basically just has a few main types of objects that you're kind of CRUDing. If in the case of Airbnb, it's users, locations, bookings. And most apps, if you think about it, can be reduced to something similar. And this is kind of, especially for maybe junior devs or people who are kind of thinking about what they need to learn. This is just kind of a good way to not be overwhelmed by what some of the big, successful companies are doing. Pinterest, similar, peoples and pins. That's all it is, right, Dan? Wherever you are. Indeed, it's basically scraping jobs or getting available jobs, presenting the info in a more convenient way. So one tip I always need to remind myself still is just use what you already know. I know there was Jenna had a talk about this morning about shiny objects. It's a similar kind of idea. I've tried to start many projects with purely serverless functions, and then always come back to doing a Rails app in the end, which then I could later strip down if I need to, if I have the good problem of having too many users or whatever problem I need to solve. Because you use what you know, because you don't know when you're going to lose interest next week, and you don't want to spend that week learning some new language. That's just a complete waste of time. Heroku, I still use Heroku, and I've honestly given up trying to deploy a Rails app on any other platform. Don't optimize prematurely for good problems. This goes for big companies too. I work for one that puts way too many resources on something that usually fails. Let's see. So as long as you're not totally stupid in your initial architecture, you can always split things up later or optimize. So testing is important. Probably more important than a side project where you're not putting a lot of time into than even something that you're focusing your 9 to 5 on. But I just basically test the happy paths just to make sure that I didn't do anything obvious when deploying my latest update. So I'm all about minimum viable product, but also minimum viable code. The less I'm typing, the less errors I'm going to have. So whenever I get off Rails, so I mentioned AWS Lambda. So these are like basically little snippets of code that are not running on a 24/7 server, but or at least something that you're managing. But they're little snippets of code that now are kind of available in libraries that you can kind of basically plug and play and create services on, or you can use to optimize parts of your existing app. And they get charged by the millisecond, basically, or 100 milliseconds at a time. So there's things like Firebase, which is basically Google's collection of services, the common services that every app has, authentication, analytics, image storage, all rolled into one seamless platform. And as you'll see later, there's tons of tutorials for them to kind of help you get started using their tools. So I think it was last year when I first did this talk, I mentioned that all the cloud tech giants they're all at war now for even the tiniest startup, even your tiniest side project. So this is AWS Amplify is basically Amazon's response to Firebase, a collection of tools that pulls together all of their services, and there's tons of tutorials and videos to help you get started. Expo, React Native, you may or may not know, is a cross-platform way to launch mobile apps where you just basically have to know JavaScript and React. You don't have to know Swift, and you don't have to know a bunch of new languages. So a lot of amazing functionality now is just one API call away. Here's Google's got a whole list of end AI services, and for a lot of these, you don't need to build your own. You don't need to train your own data model. It's all there for you, and you can optimize their data models, but they kind of cover most kind of common applications. And here's one. I mean, so some of these services you can build an entire business off. So I've used this before. This is kind of a new service from Microsoft. It basically takes a list of questions and answers and turns it into a chatbot that you can then deploy on SMS or Slack or Messenger or Telegram with just a couple clicks. So economies of scale, they also apply to side projects. So whether it's GitHub or error tracking or continuous deployment, most services like Sentry or Semaphore, they let you have multiple projects on the same account. So basically, the incremental cost of starting a new project is almost nothing. So on the visual side, front end, I mean, Bootstrap and material, you don't need to make your side project look ugly. It's super easy to get something up that's reasonably good looking. And then, photographers hate this, but there's sites like Unsplash where you take beautiful pictures, and this could be the background of your landing page, or whatever you want. There's all kinds of use cases for this. Okay, so if you don't already know how to code, obviously there's you just spend $20,000 on a boot camp, then you're all set. So there's lots of resources that I think people should look at first, and look at a few times, and then think about whether they want to go into a class and learn to code in a classroom with one teacher. So there's Free Code Camp. They have a curriculum. They got a community of coders. I haven't taken any classes here, but there's even like certifications that you can get. This is kind of my favorite. So YouTube is, I know it's in some ways overrated, but I think it's underappreciated as a learning platform. So this is not clickbait. I watched this the other night. So this is these are 40-minute videos that Suraj puts up where he goes, and they come with GitHub repos with all the code, detailed description of every part from the front end to the back end, the mobile, the architecture of stuff. So the one that I'm featuring, it just happens to be an AI stock picker, and it actually also places the trades for you using some other Y Combinator company that actually has an API that lets you buy and sell stock. And he cranks out a different video every week. It's amazing what he puts out, and I guarantee that some idea that you have is a variation of what he or many other YouTube nerdy celebrities have put up for you. This is his GitHub. So there's also, I still don't know this guy's name, German guy I call him, but basically he covers a ton of topics from very basic concepts. This is the only way I learned how to code in React was actually watching German guy. I read all the books and I tried a bunch of stuff, never really got it. So I highly recommend him. Pardon me? I don't, but hit me up after. Yeah, I'm sure other people here, right? Yeah.
Max on Udemy, this guy said.
Thanks, Stan. So this might be hard to see, but this is a 73-part tutorial on making a Slack clone. And these are like 10, 15, 20-minute videos going into every little detail of functionality. And I bet you can find a different playlist of, I know for a fact that there are different playlists just of Slack clones. And honestly, you get what you do if you watch these, you get different perspectives, you hear different screw-ups, different bugs, different random asides. And honestly, to me, this is better. This is like watching a mentor. This is better than having a teacher who may or may not be able to answer every question that you have. And those kind of random tangents are sometimes the most valuable parts of these videos because they'll probably solve some undocumented thing that you'll run across. So here's someone cloning every detail of Uber. This is happening right now. So he's only done 1 or 2 of these. So he's using Flutter, which is my latest favorite mobile framework, to implement every little detail of Uber. So on GitHub you can watch. There's a curated list of developer streams. Literally, these people are just coding, and you're just watching them code. And they're probably, I haven't watched a ton of them, but they're talking through what they're doing. You can see what they're doing on screen. They're obviously going to tell you what project they're working on. But I mean, these are all mentors and teachers. These are so valuable that even the big tech giants are producing their own videos, using their own developer advocates, making up projects, and then live coding from you there. You can see them stumble, awkward silences, debugging, refactoring, all the real stuff. And you talk about competition. So this is Amazon's response to Google's live coding channel. It's just amazing. I mean, this wasn't happening like last year. So instead of my wife has her own, she watches normal stuff, and then this is what I do. I'll subscribe to a bunch of channels, and then I'll after dinner, pour some wine, and then I'll just watch some nerdy videos of, something that happened at AWS or some Google News or whatever it is. And so you guys know why senior devs always need 2 monitors, right? Okay, so this is really... This joke worked last year too, and I'm glad that. So really, the difference between a junior and a senior developer is like who can Google better. So don't be afraid to copy and paste, but just know at least in 1 or 2 sentences, be able to explain basically what you just pasted. And do that after a while, you'll pick things up pretty good. Okay, so let's say. Even with that, you can't even copy and paste. I'm not going to judge, but okay, there's still things you can do. So MakerPad is a great. This is by Ben Tossell, who used to work at Product Hunt. There's tons of tutorials on how to piece together existing services to build an app. Ryan Hoover, put this list together of easy ways to get landing pages, build chat apps. This is a site called Glitch, which is basically a combination of GitHub. So there's a bit of code here, but it's basically a combination of GitHub and it's GitHub with a REPL. So you get the code, but then you can actually run it in the browser. Then you can fork it and then tweak it. So it's a good way to learn, but also there are some real I don't want to show them all here, but there are some real example apps that do a bunch, some services. So once you build something, then you're ready to launch. You throw a big party. You post on Facebook. Your friends and family get excited, and they tell you everything's good. But except your friends and family lie to your face. So they're not the best users for your app. Pitch nights, pitch competitions. So even Y Combinator is moving away from demo days. I know they still do demo days at a lot of the accelerators in town. Stuff like mini demo I like because they're very low key. And I think you should be able to explain what you're doing. That should be something that you should be able to do. But demo days, these pitch competitions, I'm personally not a big fan of. I don't think you need to be spending time getting ready for that. So when you are ready to put something out there, and I recommend putting something out there when you're still uncomfortable with it, there's still lots of things you can do. And because there's so many best practices, this is also another list that's on GitHub. It's a long checklist of things that you're probably going to forget to do. And I would recommend just plow through this list, just kind of almost without thinking, once you're ready to put something out there. So apart from, there's the iOS and Google App Stores, but here's other easy ways to just kind of get at least a trickle of users in. There's all the big API platforms have some kind of app store. So this is Shopify. I've got a couple things on here. Slack has their own app store. A lot of companies are going through these, looking for something that might be useful to them. Even Amazon has one just for Alexa skills, if that's your jam. And then related to getting users and related to kind of accelerator FOMO, kind of chasing after big company partnerships is almost always a bad idea, especially early on. And I'm not going to belabor that point. Some people might disagree. So beyond that, there are other ways to spend money to get users, but fairly cheaply. So this is literally, there's Facebook targeting. And this is in the news a lot, but people probably don't know what the UI looks like. It's easy to make an ad, put an image, a link, and some text, and then you can target by location. You can target by their demographic interests, including life events. Are they away from their family? Are they in a long-distance relationship? All kinds of good things. Twitter is not as effective. It's a little bit smaller, but I kind of find the targeting options even more interesting. So you can still do interest behaviors, but you can do lookalikes. I didn't mention lookalikes for Facebook, but you can say match me with people who resemble followers of my competitors' Twitter accounts. Okay, so that's super powerful. And for Facebook, you can also you can upload an encrypted list of people who signed up to your site or app or whatever, and they will not only target those people, but you can do a lookalike audience, which is basically going to people who kind of match that profile. Again, it's amazing. And then there's also retargeting, which is basically, it's relatively easy to turn on, but that's just basically Facebook or Google just dropping a cookie onto anybody's computer who visits your site, and then they kind of follow, you kind of basically get to follow them around the web and stalk them until they eventually come back. The cool thing is you can actually dynamically tweak that ad based on where they land on your site. So if they land on a product page, you can send them a specific creepy stalking ad for that thing. And these cost a little bit of money. They don't have to cost a lot of money, especially if you do cost per attribution, where you're actually paying only if somebody makes a purchase or signs up for your service. So I think once you've exhausted that initial checklist, those are good routes to take. And if you're wondering, if that's a good way to spend your money, this is kind of like my hometown of San Francisco. This is kind of where most VC money goes towards. It's basically either landlords or Google and Facebook. And so these are proven ways to bring users in. The best way, though, obviously, so great customer support is usually the best way to kind of differentiate yourself from even a larger startup. And it's definitely the best way to keep users on your site. The best way to make money is to not lose money. So, and I have this completely untested thesis that you can clone an existing company exactly and just cap it to 100 users, and then just offer insane customer support, and you will make a decent living. And if somebody tries that, let me know. Okay, so when should I work on this? And I have 5 minutes. Okay, so don't wait for an accelerator. Don't wait for good advice. Don't wait to build your network. Just get started and use kind of like I've hopefully told you how to learn to code, cold email founders, get advice from people that are not necessarily being gatekept from you. Don't have to wait for other people's money. And I'd say you'd be surprised at how much time you have. Okay, if you told me, I'm old enough. If you told me back in the '80s that everybody would be walking around with a supercomputer in their pocket, connected to all humans and all human knowledge, okay, I'd be like, everyone's gonna be a genius, and there'll never be fake news, and everything is gonna be amazing. So you'd be surprised at how much time you spend, how much time you can get back. I don't use this enough, but because honestly, it's kind of embarrassing. But but time is money, and I'd recommend using screen time. You are going to be spending some nights and weekends. I would just recommend listen to your body. Your body will tell you when you just need to take a break for a couple days. Just don't make it a habit. And I like to put it. So last year, I started a Slack channel, and I was like, let's talk about our side project. Not a lot of people kind of stuck around after a couple of weeks. There's one person, but I'll put another challenge out there. I'd probably get even less people. If every week somebody text me your screen time screenshot. You can contact me anytime for any advice. But I want to see if I haven't figured out how, but I want to dive deeper with people and overcome whatever roadblock you have. But text me your screen time screenshot every week, and at least make one Git commit as a challenge. And then I think I'm hoping that can kind of spur people to kind of continue projects and have your own army of side projects helping you out. So that's it. Now it's time to take your shot. Thank you. I finally finished this year for the first time.